Banner Operational Data Store, or the ODS as we call it. I am Steve Terry, and I'm one of the directors here of professional services here on the Banner practice. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. We ask that during the presentation that you keep your questions in the chat window. We'll have an opportunity where we'll ask you to open up your mic. But in the meantime, if you could just mute your microphone during the presentation, that'll be helpful so we don't get the background noise. Also, as I'd mentioned, we'll open it back up at the end in the Q&A part, but feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. And we also want to note that we're going to record the session, and we're going to send that to you following the conclusion of today's activities. My colleagues today that are going to do the presentation, first one is Joe Oresti. Joe is an experienced Oracle DBA, also on the Banner practice. It's been around for over 20 years in higher ed, providing Oracle DBA or Banner DBA services, as we like to say. And then our other colleague, Tom Ward, comes to us having served for about 18 years at Ellucian as an ODS, ODI architect, and also a DBA, very experienced and is very knowledgeable about the ODS environment. And so we're happy to have Joe and Tom here today. Here's today's agenda. We're going to kind of do, obviously we just did the overview. We're going to talk about the architecture and talk a little bit about materialized view maintenance, patching the ODS, and then just some maintenance in general. We'll kind of cover some items there. Before we get started, we're going to start with a poll to kind of figure out where you're at. And so someone will start the poll for us right now. Let's see, the poll should be coming up here in a second. There we go. We'll give you just a moment or two to look at the poll. What version of the ODS are you currently running? Kind of give us a little bit of background. And the results of those poll are. Oh, okay. Well, good. A bunch of you are at 9.x. That's really helpful. And some of you are not using it. So we'll have some information to cover both those audiences. And so that's good to know. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer that question in our poll. So let me kind of jump in. We're going to start with an overview of the ODS, and I'm going to ask Joe to kind of take us through an overview.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Ellucian's business intelligence solution, their Banner reporting or Banner performance reporting and analytics solution. We're going to be focusing today on the narrow portion of the operational data store. Ellucian's Banner Operational Data Store provides a unified and consistent view of institutional data. They use familiar business terms and definitions. It's a single source for operational reporting and ad hoc queries, which provides your knowledge workers across campus with the information they need to make better decisions. We can go to the next slide. So why we use and why institutions choose to use Ellucian's operational data store. For one reason, a lot of legacy data warehouses that institutions have been using prior to Ellucian coming out with their BPRA solutions, a lot of these legacy warehouses oftentimes had incorrect data due to a variety of reasons. Business rules change, but don't get updated into the reporting layers. New codes come in and they don't get updated into the reports. New functionality comes in, and isn't included. You get employee turnover, so the people that were, oftentimes some of these legacy warehouses have been around for decades, and multiple employees have and analysts and report writers have moved through the university, and it can just become old and decayed over time. And what Ellucian provides is it provides an accurate source of reliable data. So every time anything gets updated in Banner or Degree Works, you can rest assured, or the institution can rest assured, that their ODS is staying up to date and current with any new functionality, and it gets brought over. And so having accurate data is very important to the business units. Some of the other functionality that comes directly out of the ODS is these ability to freeze data at points in time in your reporting environment. The ad hoc capabilities that business units can use to write their own reports. They don't have to be requesting or staffing report writers as much as was required in the legacy data warehousing models. So that empowers the employees to be able to solve some of their own problems. Of course, there can be complex questions that you want to ask about the data from Banner or Degree Works, and sure, that can oftentimes require a deeper dive behind the scenes. But it does provide a foundation for future reporting and analytic solutions, which come in that previous slide, and that can move the data into the enterprise data warehouse solutions and into institutional performance management solutions, such as dashboards, key performance indicators for executives to look at an overall view of the institution's data.
Thanks, Joe. Tom, can you kind of take us through and walk us through kind of the general architecture of the ODS? I think that'll be a,
sure,
kind of a next place to go.
Sure, Steve. Everybody, I hope hears me okay. Hope everything's well in your world. So the picture of the architecture in front of us right now, ODS is the center square here that we're talking about. And I want to go through all these components briefly at a high level, and so that you understand how the architecture actually works for your ODS. So initially, when ODS is installed, the data is replicated into your ODS database using materialized views. And that, in this particular case, we're showing the Banner as the source database. And those materialized views are a one-to-one table correspondence to what's in Banner. It's important to understand that what the tables that are replicated into your ODS staging area are one-to-one, but it's not every table. So I'll get back to that in a little bit. Your ODS is split logically in half. You have a staging half on the left, and you have a reporting half on the right. And in between is the ETL, in your case, and all of our cases, ODI is used, Oracle Data Interface, or Integrator, is used to extract the data and transform it and load it into your reporting side of the database. So once your data is staged, then a load process is executed in order to move the data from those staged tables, the materialized views on the left there. That load process does two things. It truncates all of the data on the composite table on the right, and then it loads a brand new set of that data from those composite views on the left in. So that functionally works to synchronize your data with Banner if you combine all of those steps together. That is, stage the data, then load the data, because all load does is move the data from the base tables from the composite views over to the composite tables again. And that doesn't take care of any changes that are happening in Banner at all, unless you do all of the data. And that's problematic, because if you perform that process on all of your data, I've had that run over 3 days for some of my clients. So that's not realistic. We have to have another way to keep in sync with Banner. And so that other way that was developed is using Oracle's fast refresh technologies. And that's a refresh process that's scheduled to run in your ODS. And how refresh works is it goes out to your materialized view logs in Banner or DegreeWorks. It grabs, those logs contain minimalistic records that tell you exactly what record changed and what changed in that record. So that refresh process grabs those and applies those changes to those base tables, the materialized views, in your ODS database. When that change occurs in the table, it triggers, it executes a trigger, which in turn inserts a record into this change table for that change. And that starts a process of executing your refresh mapping. Your refresh mapping is 2 mappings, actually. It's a delete mapping and an ODI delete mapping and ODI update mapping. Delete executes first. So delete goes out to the change table, grabs that record. There's an ID in that record. It removes all the records on the reporting side in the composite table, removes all the records for that ID. And then the update mapping runs. Update mapping goes to the change table and it joins the change table with the composite view. And that returns a set of rows just for that ID, which are reinserted back into the composite table. So at 1,000 feet up, that is how refresh technology works. That is applying only what has changed in Banner over into your ODS to keep your ODS in sync with Banner and only apply just the changes. So having said that, there's 2 different ways to keep your data in sync. There's the staging load technique, which is all records. Then there's the fast refresh technique, which only applies changes. So in an event where there's something, this is way off the wall, but let's say something over in Banner tweaks every single row in the Banner database. That's a kind of an event that your DBAs or your technical folks would know was coming. And if that happened, you wouldn't want your fast refresh technique to try to handle that kind of volume because the overall amount of work that fast refresh does is a little bit more, but it doesn't have to deal with every single record. In that kind of a scenario, it would have to deal with every single record, and it would take much longer than the stage and reload techniques would. So one real quick example where that might happen is when if you're in your non-production environment, for instance, it's really common to go ahead and clone down your production data. In that kind of an event, everything changes in Banner. So you would want to clear out your materialized view logs in Banner and go ahead and restage all the data and reload all the data in that kind of an event, right? That's a good example of when that might happen. Otherwise, you want to have a scheduled refresh process running in ODS every night or more. It's up to you can run it more often if you want. And that keeps your data in your ODS in sync. So that's it for architecture from a high level. And the next 8 slides, folks, are what I just talked about. So we're going to just pop through those so that they're on the recording and you can go back and review them later if you want. It's just the verbiage of what I just covered on how everything works and the architecture of the ODS.
So Tom, that's terrific. I appreciate that. Can you talk to us a little bit? A lot of us have experienced, the maintenance of materialized views and what's involved in that. Can you walk us through what you find is important in terms of maintenance with these materialized views?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the materialized view maintenance all occurs from the ODS admin interface on the staged tab. And so you have a number of different things on the stage tab that you can select. And one of those is reconcile stage tables. And it is just what it says, reconciling stage tables. So those tables that are on the staging side of your ODS, there's a process that will compare that table with what's in Banner. And so you have 3 different options when you run that. One option will just compare the table and tell you, okay, this has this difference. And then there's another option that will let you compare and actually restage if there is a difference. And then the other one just says, just restage. And restage is a two-step process. Number one, it will move all of the data from Banner over into your stage table. And number two, it clears out the materialized view logs. Okay, so what it doesn't do is it does not move the data from the staged table over into your reporting side of the database. So you have to run a load process in order to, if you restage a table, in order to get the data from your staged area into your reporting area. And when you do use this procedure, the reconcile stage tables, and you stage something, it automatically creates that load process for you, whatever you've staged. And it puts it's on another tab over where you set up all of your processes, all your load and refresh processes to run. And it's called, if I'm getting the language right, load recently restaged tables is what it's called. So you just go execute that after you restage a table. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. There's also on the staging tab, there's another selection called maintain stage tables. This is where you can add tables into your ODS. Okay, this is the first step of customization. If you want to add something, I mentioned earlier that your baseline ODS is a one-to-one correspondence to Banner tables, but it isn't all the Banner tables. It's just a subset of tables that were chosen as typical higher education institutional tables that are required for reporting in very common situations. Occasionally, you're going to run into a situation where one of the tables in your baseline ODS is not part of baseline ODS, and you need it for reporting. They give you a very simple process. As long as the schema, example general or Saturn, exists in your ODS, you can select any table from that schema in Banner and put it into, and it takes like a minute, and put it into your ODS. You can also do that, and you use this process to do it, the maintain stage tables, and you add. When you go into this in the ODS admin interface, you'll be given a list of tables when you select the schema. The only tables on that list are tables that don't already exist, that haven't already been staged in your ODS. So initially, that's everything that's not baseline. And so you just select the table you want and you execute it. And in minutes, that table is now in your staged area. It's also set up for you so that when you do refreshes for Saturn, if it was a Saturn table, let's say, and you do a refresh for Saturn, even though it's not in the baseline, it's going to refresh that table. So the data in the staging area for that table would have been synchronized with Banner again. It doesn't, however, move that data over to your reporting area. You'd have to build that out. That's, like I said, the first step of your customizations. So when you do stage, it brings over all your indexes and everything for a table. Trying to see if there's anything else here that's worth hitting on. If you have any questions about anything in the Banner performance and reporting analytics guidelines that you can download from the support center, the Ellucian Support Center is imperative, and we'll be talking about that again in a few minutes. That's about it. Very important to at least schedule reporting, staging area status report to run. I like to see people do this at least, maybe even every night, and then have your ODS admin check not only the staging area status, but also all your other control reports as well. This will check all of the components in your baseline, as well as other components that you staged yourself, and make sure that they are in line with what's in Banner. And they'll report errors, and those errors you can fix using restaging and those things that I talked about a little bit earlier. Okay.
Tom, if you don't mind, Talk
Okay.
to us a little bit about, just patching in general, the ODS. I know this comes up
Sure.
often, and we're often asked by customers, and clients to talk about this piece of it. So what's involved with, patching?
The main thing, and the main reason why I wanted to talk a little about this is often when I get into a client's system, I find that they are behind in patching, in that when the install happens or the upgrade happens, they get patched up to that date, but then nobody ever looks at it again. So I think it's really important to take a look in the download center where they have the ODS patches, consistently go out there and look for new ones. The one thing I want to say about that is run these two scripts so you know what version you're at and what patches. Have your DBAs run that against the database and see what version and patches have been applied. And the last thing I want to say about patches, be very, very careful. Don't apply patches that are not pertinent to your system. Make sure you don't apply a patch for finance XXX when you are on finance YYY. Be very cautious. If you have any questions, open a ticket with Action Line immediately and ask them, should I apply this patch? Once you apply a patch, it's very difficult to back it out, and it's a mess. It messes up all your control reports, it messes up all your health checks, and you just don't want to do it. So just be very careful, but make sure to review patches if you can.
We'll probably need to take a moment and talk about the ODS maintenance, if we don't mind. And Joe, kind of talk us through these administrative tasks, and if you could go into a little detail of what's involved with this.
Sure. In addition to what Tom was saying about running the control reports and keeping a look at what those outputs are and seeing if there's any errors, just your daily Oracle DBA tasks, making sure that there's space on the disk, making sure that there's no errors in your alert logs. Now, when you're doing customizations, you want to make sure that you're backing those up specifically and ensuring, because if you're going to do an upgrade or if you're going to move to the next version, there are some solutions where if you're not doing customizations, it's oftentimes easier just to do a new install than to do the upgrade from, let's say 9.2, let's say if they came out with a 9.4 or something. So if you're doing any customizations, then you'll want to make sure that you're getting an export of those tables. Those could facilitate an easier migration to new versions. And then, of course, staying current with your Oracle and Oracle database patching, operating system patching for security and updates, and even potentially the Oracle Data Integrator, patching that and keeping it current will relieve you of running into bugs in the future based on being too out of date with your versioning of your software.
Can you talk to us a little bit about, kind of the decision to support and upgrade the upgrade model here, Tom, if you don't mind, what's involved with some of this?
You bet. I can sure touch bases on that. Really, it's kind of common sense here, and I saw that most everybody was on 9. So a lot of the complexities arise when you're back a few versions. So, but if you're at 9, the one thing, and I mentioned this earlier, you have to do before you upgrade is pull down your Banner Analytics resource guidelines. There's graphs in there that tell you what versions of what are supported for that version of ODS. It's imperative that you know before you upgrade to a new version of ODS that your current Banner module versions are supported. Countless times I've seen like folks that have Banner Advanced, and they haven't used it for years and haven't upgraded it, and it's out there. You don't want to install components in the ODS around Advanced, or you don't want to apply patches, etc. So you need to, and that's all listed very clearly in the Banner Analytics resource guidelines. So that is your friend. Also about that guide, make sure to download it new every time you use it, because they change it almost monthly. and don't just download it once and use that forever, because they make changes constantly to that. That's about it. We've already talked about some patches. So
Yeah. What we often find when we're asked to help clients are, these are some of the key areas, doing a kind of an assessment of their environments. One of the big ones is migrating from OWB to OWI. Most of you are at 9X, so that's not going to be an issue. Some general understanding of how the ODS functions, some of the things that, some of the high points that Tom and Joe touched on, and then kind of the customization, whether it be through the, materialized views or just bringing in the best practices that we've found at, working with lots of clients over the years. These are some of the things that we're asked to do when we kind of are brought in to help schools. So kind of give you an overview of how we approach the work and often what we're asked to do. Let's have a conversation. We wanted to save enough time. We've already got one question already, and I'll ask both. I'll start off with Tom to kind of to touch on this, but we've been asked to, can we touch on fine-grained access security within the ODS? And I know that has been a topic with some schools lately. So Tom, if you could kick us off, and Joe, if there's anything else you want to add, you can as well. Thanks.
yeah, you bet. I can talk about that briefly. It's completely built into the ODS admin interface, yes. So if you're using fine-grained access in Banner, you can implement that same fine-grained access in ODS. It's actually fairly simple to do. It's all done through the ODS admin interface. There's no behind the scenes database work that has to be done or scripting or anything like that. It's all done through that interface. You set up your users, you give the users the appropriate access that you want, and that access is then you turn on the fine-grained access, so it starts using that BPDI code that is automatically transferred over from Banner, and that allows you to set up the security however you want in ODS. So your ODS administrator would be doing that directly. We can definitely have, go into deeper detail if that's something that you're really interested in doing. That would take more time than we have here today to do that, but it is there. It's built into your ODS, and you can use it. It's directly out of the box.
There's sometimes some database considerations to take into account. And as Tom mentioned, it takes some drilling down to figure out some of those considerations. Joe, anything else you wanted to add to that before I open it up to the group?
Oh, no, it's fine.
Okay, great. So at this point, if you can feel free to come off mute and ask some questions. We'd love for you to do that. If you want to take the time, you can. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can certainly chat, put them in the chat window, and we can do that. But feel free to come off mute and ask some pointed questions. Don't be shy. Give you a minute there to type them in the chat. Feel free to ask anything about the ODS.
Okay, this is Carolyn from Humber College.
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, a quick question. We recently have some issue, like a performance issue, running the fine-grained access utility in ODS. I'm not sure whether this is something that some of the customers have issue with. We migrated, we upgraded our Oracle database from 11G to 12C, and this is when we start having the issue with the fine-grained access. I'm not sure whether this is within ODS or whether it's within Cognos, because the issue actually arises when users are running the report for users who have restricted fine-grained access in ODS. The reports that they run will be timing out because it is taking too long to run. So I don't know if this is related to ODS.
Hi, Carol, and I think I've talked to you about this briefly in the past as well, and I don't have a direct solution for you on this, but I do have a couple of questions. First of all, you brought up Cognos. In Cognos, have you set up kind of a third-party method for Cognos to interpret the user that is actually executing the report, as far as, in order for Cognos to actually implement that kind of fine-grained access, you'd have to have the user information actually transferred back from ODS to the to Cognos.
Yes.
So that, and what process do you know how that was done?
Well, we didn't really do that. Like we will be doing that in like the open command, open and close command. So in terms of like on the Cognos side, the Cognos person would just log on and run the reports. And then I believe there is a function that is in the ODS that is doing all the data security, data access.
Okay.
So it's not really done within Cognos. It's more done using the ODS package, I think, the functions.
Okay.
Sure,
Okay.
how to still have this issue. Still like struggling with it.
I would have to, I definitely would have to look more at how that was implemented in Cognos, because out of the box, the Cognos metadata that's provided with ODS, wouldn't be able to handle fine-grained access, right? It would have had to have been something that done in order for it to carry that user's credentials back and forth and know in order for that to work properly. And there is a process, I've seen it myself, that did that were set up as a third party. It's not an Elucian product directly that they actually support. You couldn't go to Action Line, but they did have one. I've seen it put in place before. So I'd have to look at that a little deeper to see. But also one other question. You said this only started occurring when you left from 11G to 12C. I don't think I asked you this question before. Is that the only change that happened when you moved from 11G to 12C?
Yes.
Was it just the Oracle
Just
version,
the Oracle,
nothing else?
Yeah.
You didn't upgrade at that time? No upgrades, no nothing, just database.
Just the database upgrade.
Okay.
And the strange thing is the users who have full access, they don't have the issue. I think it has something to do with the database predicate that is appended to the function, the ODS functions. So yeah, it's just something that is like.
I did review your case with Elucian on this.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, everything that you have done, and this has been going on for a while, is the steps I would have taken as well so far. And I really couldn't offer anything else so far. Definitely keep your case open and keep them working it. I don't know for sure what else I would have done in that case. I understand what you think it is, and that may very well be, but I'm not sure what else I could provide at this time anyway. We would certainly try if you would like us to.
And Carolyn, it may take a kind of a really deep dive into working both with us and Elucian to resolve this issue. And it could require, to be quite honest, it could require taking a look at even upgrading the database even to the next level, since we're at a version that's coming into life already with the 12. So it may be jump to 19C that's required as part of that as well. Again, requiring deeper dives to be able to get to the heart of the problem here. And
I would add from a database perspective, when you jump these versions, the optimizers change that optimizes queries. Of course, I don't know if that is part of the problem.
Joe, they've already went down that line.
Right.
This ticket has got a lot of movement, and they've went down all of that line, at least as near as I could tell. They've been very detailed about what they've done. They've tried to apply all of that.
And tracing, have been able to like trace the query to find out what the optimizer is actually doing with that predicate and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are things that can be that you can look at. So you would isolate the query, you would run it through Oracle has tracing software that will trace and tell you exactly how the database is resolving that query. And from there, you can set profiles on those queries. That's often a thing that I do all the time as a DBA. I'll track it through Enterprise Manager. It will show slow running queries. You can have you can analyze those queries, and then you can place a profile on it that will basically optimize and search the database faster specifically for that query. So it will run through different solutions to try and speed up those queries. And that can oftentimes be a big performance boost.
Yeah, thanks. We do have another question. Afnan asked a question, and the question is, can we upgrade Banner to a higher release of Oracle 19c while keeping the ODS at 12CR1? We've kind of just talked about this, but Tom, can you give us the answer to that?
Steve, what was the question again?
The question is, can we upgrade Banner to a higher release of Oracle 19c while keeping the ODS at 12CR1?
Yes. ODS has no direct connection to Banner at all, except for database links.
Okay.
So yes, it has no correlation to Banner in that regard.
However, it may be recommended that you try to keep those upgrades kind of generally in sync with one another. Is that kind of the preferred or methodology?
I don't think there's necessarily any preference. I think from a DBA perspective, yes, staying up as high as you can. Again, I'm going to point you back to the resource guidelines.
Right.
Make sure before you do an upgrade that all of your module, all your ODS, that your ODS is supporting it. Right.
Right.
Are you talking? So is the person talking about 12.2.0.1?
12CR1.
So is that 12.1.0.2? Because then I think that's out of support.
Right. That's a valid point.
And then in the 12.2.0.1, I did have a client just recently where their banner was on it was the reverse. Their data warehouse was on 19C and the banner was still back at 12.2.01, but they were on a base install of 12.2.01. So you want to make sure that if you are going to be on this on 12.2.01, that you'll want to be on the latest release update. Because at this client, they installed 12.2.01 and then they never applied a release update. And that introduced a bug between the materialized views between that 19C and that 12.2.01 database. So you will want to make sure that you are patched as recently as you can be for that older version. And it would be preferable if the databases were on the same version. You want to try and keep those moving forward together.
Yeah.
And I think 12.2.01 is going to be out of support very quickly anyways with, or if it's not already with Oracle here soon.
Yeah. So thank you all for those questions. Thank you for spending this time with us. As we mentioned, we will be forwarding, this presentation to you all so that you'll have it, the access to the recording.